And we are back with another episode of the Jag Bros. This is Joey Raymond with my two older brothers, Jack and JT. And we are here on a victory week after we have beaten the Houston Texans at their home and their battle red uniforms. And we went in there and we took care of business. Played a little bit better than what the scoreboard had said, but we went in there and we handled their business, and we made sure to leave those Houston Texans fans crying and complaining about every little thing, but the Jags just dominated them, and we will dominate them in the future. This is going to be a great rivalry for the next 10 years. CJ Stroud is good, but I am not going to go with all of the other national media just praising him. Trevor played better. It's just facts. It's with the stats. We played better than they did, and I can't wait to hear what y'all think as well. Me and Jack were at that game, and it was a great atmosphere and a great game. Jack, how did you feel about the game?
It was amazing. Yeah, so Joey and I were there, and we were actually on the side of the field right behind the end zone where that last-second field goal comes up just a few inches short, and it was so sweet. Joey, you were passing out Kleenex to the Houston Texans fans, and for the most part, they were really good sports. We did have a few people throw some peanuts at us, and Joey was ready to fire back. I was like, look, we're outnumbered like 200-1 in our section. But it was awesome after the game, going down closer to the field, seeing a lot of Jaguars fans, seeing Captain Duval and getting to take a picture with Mr. UK London Jags fan. And so it was amazing. It really felt like, JT, you called this out in the preview, it felt like playoff football in the end of November. And JT, I know you were screaming at the TV, cheering for the Jags. What was it like for you?
Wow. Well, Joey, your intro makes it sound really personal. So I certainly want to hear more about some of these stories in the stands. But all I can say is it's such a relief, honestly, that the Jags are actually good again. For a decade plus, we watched arguably the worst team in the NFL take the field and lose week after week after week in all sorts of unbelievably embarrassing ways. And so the fact that we're no longer the laughingstock of the NFL, the fact that we just continue to win, and hey, we keep picking these wins in these preview games, but you know what? We still come out and win most of the games. So it's just fun again. Oh, it's so great. One of the things I've always said is it's the bad times that make you appreciate the good times that much more. And right now, I really appreciate these great times.
It is great times right now. We are 6-0 on the road. The Jaguars are playing a little differently. Normally, you want to go undefeated at home and you split your away games, but the Jags are going undefeated on the away games and splitting their home games. What do y'all think about the Jags going away from home, but yet still winning and undefeated on the road?
I think it shows how well this team has bonded together. That's what I loved what Doug Peterson said coming into that locker room afterwards. And Joey, I remember week 3, after getting whooped up by the Houston Texans, you called out and said, hey, this Jaguars team, maybe the best thing possible is a 2-week trip over to London, bond together, play some great football. And that's what's made this team special. And Coach Dougie P said, hey, you guys are fighting for one another. You're playing hard for one another. And I think that's what's given us so much success on the road. And I love us to start building up some home games starting this Monday with our first Monday Night Football game in 12 years since 2011. First Monday Night Football game against the Bengals coming up here soon.
Hey, before we get into the game balls, Joey, why were the people throwing peanuts at you guys? What were you saying to antagonize everybody?
Well, I'd say 90% of the Houston fans were great. We were having some fun banter, them calling out all the refs and me saying how they needed to quit holding us and, you know, just having kind of that good football chat back and forth. But there was one, maybe two fans who just were being terrible, throwing peanuts. They're lucky I didn't catch them, whoever it was throwing the peanuts, because I was going to go right up there and get after it. But they hid like little babies that they are. So that just tells you kind of what you have at Houston Texans.
For the playoffs, Joey should certainly be at most of those games. So if you see us in the stands, we're ready to throw hands against any team that comes up against us.
Definitely. And I think the reason also why the Jaguars have been undefeated on the road is it seems like they handle it like a business trip. And those have been our best games. They're able to focus in on the game. They fly together. They're together as a team, and they handle it as a business trip. I think sometimes when they go home and they have a bye week and they get a little bit out of routine, that's when the mistakes kind of happen. So the Jaguars just need to handle the rest of these games like a business trip.
Absolutely. And we want to give some shout outs to you all because not only do we love the Jacksonville Jaguars, but we love the Jaguars fan base. And it felt like we were the only Jags fans in a sea of red until all those red Houston Texans fans left. And Joey and I stayed for a while, and it was awesome to celebrate with you all. So I know we can't shout out everyone who listens to the podcast, but wanted to shout out a few people. We had Dwayne, who told us on Twitter that he just followed us on Spotify. So thanks for doing that. And what's been really cool is we've had a couple of the players, family members start to follow us on Twitter. I don't know if y'all are listening as well, but we love every single Jaguars player, even if we're hard on them at times. And so I know Trayvon Walker's mom now follows us, and Walker Little's mom now follows us on Twitter. And both your sons had great games on Sunday. So just want to give a big shout out to every Jaguars fan, every Jag Bros fan, and thank you for following. Please continue to follow us on social media, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, and give us a 5-star ratings and review because this is, as JT was saying, the best time to be a Jaguars fan.
The best time indeed. In order to make sure we recognize the people that are the best of the games, let's start handing out some game balls. And I'll start, and I'm actually going to start on defense. I mean, the obvious one on offense, I'll save for one of you guys. But defensively, it has to go to Josh Allen. Joey, from the beginning of the year, you've been really, really high on him, and he has exceeded some of those expectations. 2.5 sacks yesterday, as well as 12 pressures in that game. He was unstoppable, and not to mention he was probably held on every other play that he didn't get a pressure or a sack when they went back to pass. He was fantastic. A shout out to Josh Allen and his 4 tackles and 2.5 sacks. He's giving my game ball.
Josh Allen was amazing, especially those 1.5 sacks on the final drive that we needed every negative yard because, again, that field goal came up just inches short. And I don't know if y'all saw, actually, I know you guys saw, but maybe as Jaguars fans, y'all missed it. But the Houston Texans cut their kicker after that game, which was perhaps a little harsh. He almost drilled a 58-yard game winner, but loved what Josh Allen did. And yeah, Joey, that may be the best call out on the Jag Bros podcast yet, was you calling in the preseason to pay him. Now everyone is saying it, but it wasn't popular at the time. I'm going to go with a more obscure player, and I think I know where Joey will go with his game ball, but I want to give my game ball to D'Ernest Johnson. So this is a guy that I loved when the Jaguars picked up. I thought he deserved some more reps, and I think we're seeing him get some more reps to ease some of that load off of ETN and save him for the playoffs. And so he only had 7 carries for 19 yards, but he had that massive 42-yard screen pass reception where he took off down that right sideline and set us up for a touchdown there in the second quarter. And so was great to see a guy who doesn't get a ton of playing time really take it and take advantage of it. So shout out to D'Ernest Johnson.
All right. If no one else will do it, I'll do it. My game ball will go to Trevor Lawrence as he played outstanding this game. He had almost tied his career high in passing yards, and he would have overpassed 400 yards if there weren't 4 drops. I believe Christian Kirk had one. Calvin Ridley had a really bad one in the end zone. Evan Ingram had a drop, and ETN definitely had a drop as well. So if those guys just caught those balls, Trevor Lawrence would have over 400 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, maybe even like a third. So definitely had a great game. There were only 2 passes that I saw that were kind of not great passes, but they weren't that bad. Trevor Lawrence overthrew Evan Ingram in the end zone, which would have been his first touchdown. Almost had him in the end zone. And then another one, I believe it was to Luke Farrell. The ball was a little behind him, almost was picked off, but wasn't. So not that bad of a throw, but he had an absolute great game. I thought he had time in the pocket. So shout out to the offensive line for doing that. But we were moving the ball vertically down the field, not horizontal. And we were definitely much better in the passing game. So my hat's off and my game ball goes to Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, and that's a perfect tie into the offense. The offense was led by Trevor, 364 passing yards, 445 total offensive yards, 24 points from an offensive standpoint too is excellent. We played really well against a defense that, as we talked about, is improving week over week. They're really buying into D'Amico Ryan's schemes and coaching, and you can tell that this defensive unit is significantly better than where they were back in September. But it did not matter because of how Trevor was playing. And Joe, you brought up a good point too about the vertical attack. I was listening to 1010XL, and Tony Baselli was talking about how after watching the film, it's pretty evident that we are stretching the ball more downfield in the last two games than we had been in the previous 6 or 7 games. And so part of that could be the fact that we had time, which we'll talk more about the offensive line in a second. Part of that is also Zay Jones coming back. We didn't get to see a lot of that for the first part of the year because he was out. And so he unlocks different plays. And so look, we were awfully harsh on Press Taylor a few weeks ago. I doubt he listened to our podcast, but I'm sure he heard some of the grumblings from the Jacksonville fans. And while I don't think it's perfect, and at times our offense still feels a little clunky, we are stretching the ball downfield. Trevor is looking downfield, and we're running some great routes that is allowing us to get huge chunk plays, especially on the game on Sunday.
What are you talking about, JT? We know Press Taylor is listening for sure, but it was one of our best offensive performances, certainly moving the ball yardage. We own the time of possession very well in another game. That seems to be a reoccurring pattern when we play very well. And it was so close to hitting all three of our keys on the offensive side of the ball going into the preview. Joey, you called for a clean game, and if the refs had called that holding on Ingram, it would have been a clean game with that being the only interception. I know I called out Calvin Ridley having a big game, 100 yards and a touchdown, which he almost had 100 yards with 5 catches, 89 yards and a touchdown. And then JT, you called out us scoring every time we were on the Texans side of the field, except for maybe once. And I believe there was 2 opportunities that we did not score, one of those being right at the end of the half. But I want to start there because I know that was a big play. So there was 1 second left after a big throw to Christian Kirk, 1 second before the half. It's 1st and goal, no timeouts. What did y'all think of the play call on 1st and goal on the 1 yard line right before the half?
Yeah, I mean, I hear a lot of people saying, oh, we should have kicked the field goal, just take the points. When did we get so conservative? There's no way. You're on like the half-yard line. Who in the world kicks the field goal on the half-yard line? If anything, that makes the field goal a little harder too because you're so close. Do what Trevor Lawrence did on the last touchdown and reach the ball over. I didn't like the play call. I liked the idea of going for it, but a sweep, actually a QB toss is what it was. So you automatically are throwing it 3 yards backwards. So now he has to gain 4 yards to get into the end zone instead of just being right there on the yard line and just reach it over. Trevor Lawrence is 6'6". He loves to do it anyways. It doesn't seem like it's ever been stopped now that I can think of. So continue to do it. If it works, it works. I don't care if they know about it. He's got the long arms. He's super tall. Let him just get into the end zone. There's no reason to get fancy and try to sweep it or catch the defense napping because it is way easier to get half a yard than it is to get 4 yards and let the defense swarm to the ball.
Joey and Jack, you guys were at the stadium. How was the atmosphere going into the half? Who was more amped? Was it the Texans fans or was it you guys?
It was the Texans fans. That definitely gave them some momentum getting that stop right there at the end.
In the NFL, it is so critical that the amount of scores you're up. So, right. So if you go from up 6 to up 9, that's 2 scores. That's huge in the NFL. Every point matters. If you had been pushed out of bounds at the 3-yard line, you're obviously kicking the field goal. And so being so close to the 1-yard line does not make the field goal kicking more difficult. It's essentially an extra point from a college level, which is 99.99% of the time is made. And so, look, here's the thing. You go up 2 scores, you have the ball, you maintain the momentum that you got from hitting that big play. Look, I get the idea of wanting to have the knockout punch there, but it's the Texans and weird things happen. And look, we threw a pick on that first drive out of the half and we were actually trailing 13-14. And you know what? If we didn't get bailed out from 2 or 3 pass interference calls as makeup calls, there's a chance that they get the ball back up 14-13. And despite feeling like we completely outplayed them, we could be trailing by 8 points by the time Jacksonville touched the ball again. So look, at the end of the day, it didn't matter, but I was sitting on the couch. As soon as he got out, I was sitting there with 2 of my longtime friends, Danny and Andrew, and I said, kick the field goal, kick the field goal, kick the field goal. The other person sitting there saying like, I'd go for it. Let's line up like men and punch it in. I can respect either side, but I don't necessarily think that's conservative or not. At the end of the day, it reminded me a lot of the Bengals game with Urban Meyer a few years ago. We played lights out the entire first half. We get stuffed on 4th and 1 when we were trying to score a touchdown right at the end of the half. And then they end up scoring and the game was over at that point. And so I don't know. It's just such a huge momentum play, especially when you're on the road. Take the points.
You're wrong. You're just wrong, JT, in so many ways, because you know how debilitating that is to your offense that you can't trust them to get a half a yard. I understand that we didn't get it, but
we didn't get it.
Give them the shot. Who kicks the field goal on the half-yard line? No one. If you're in the NFL and you can't at least go for it, then you don't deserve to be a head coach.
We didn't get it, and we didn't deserve to be, and we were losing.
We were losing because of the interception, not because we went for it. And then we went down.
Well, if we had kicked the field goal, we would have been up regardless of what the interception call.
Yeah. And so we kicked the field goal, right? And then we go up 9, and then we don't get the touchdown. We still throw the interception because that interception has nothing to do with whether we score or not. And so they go down, they score. We're only up by 3, but yet we're still kind of feeling good because we're up. And then they go down and score, and then we're trailing again. Like, you can trail at any moment. You have a shot at getting a touchdown, which you don't get a shot in the NFL, as you say, to get a touchdown that often. You're on the half-yard line. You're going to give up that shot at a touchdown for a measly 3 points on the half-yard line? I don't think so. No one in their right mind would kick a field goal on the half-yard line. Come on.
It's one play. If they had 4 plays at the half-yard line, of course they would go for it. But look, I don't disagree with a lot of what you're saying. I'm just saying it's not this obvious, like, oh, they should definitely do it. If they're up 2 and they get to go up 5, yeah, or it's still a 1-score game, sure, I think it makes more sense. But look, it's not the hill I'm going to die on, I guess you will say. And so there was a lot of things offensively that we did well. It was unfortunate that we did not get that touchdown. I do disagree with the toss play on 4th and short is one of my least favorite plays. It worked for Alabama the day before, but I feel like it works less than 50% of the time in those short yardage downs. And if you watch the tape, the Texans were kind of waiting for that. They had overloaded that side of the line, expecting there to be some sort of off tackle thing. And we historically don't run as well on the right side of the line either. So it's just a kind of a questionable play call on top of a not necessarily a questionable decision to go for it. I mean, it's certainly defensible, but a very questionable play call for sure.
Well, I thought it would lead to some fun debate, and there's certainly a lot of debate on Jags social media, both sides. I don't think it was truly to me a 50-50 call. Of course, 2020 hindsight, of course, is always going to look wrong. The play call, if it worked, everyone would be crowned him genius. If you got the field goal and then scored after the half, it's genius as well. And so It was interesting too, because the greatest struggle, there's two great struggles for the offense. Number one was we struggled to run the ball. So we had 30 carries for only 81 yards, 2.7 yards per carry. And we did have a lot of struggles, especially inside the 10-yard line. This seems to be the Achilles heel still of this offense, even when we're rolling, even when Trevor's potentially getting as many as 400 yards passing, as you point out, Joey, if he gets all those catches, we're still struggling to get the ball in the end zone. And I'm not 100% sure why, other than when ETN can't bulldoze into the end zone, that passing attack just gets so bunched up in the end zone. So I want to ask you guys, what is the solution for the Jaguars to start scoring more touchdowns other than field goals in the red zone?
Easy. You saw it twice in a row on the same play. It's do a quick slant to Calvin Ridley. He's going to be able to beat anybody off the line. And if you just do some clear outs, isolate that, I think that's going to be there more often than not.
Quit adding an extra defender to every single one of your wide receivers. And when I say that, I mean, quit throwing it on the tiptoe of the out of bounds. The out of bounds in the end zone is an extra defender because all they have to do is push you out of bounds. You need to start getting touchdowns in the center of the end zone or at the very goal line of the end zone. There is no reason that we need to be at the very back of the end zone with the sidelines there and technically adding an extra defender to all of our wide receivers. It's just not smart red zone playing. You want your receiver as free and clear as possible away from the sideline, not next to it.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I think the quick slant or the whip around the defender there that Ridley did essentially twice in a row is exactly like you and I are in complete agreement on that one, Joey.
Yes, and to the quick slants of Calvin Ridley, please run that more often. As I have said in other episodes of this podcast, he's a route runner. A quick slant is the perfect route for a route runner. And we saw him when you hit him in the middle of the field, he was able to take it for almost 40 yards. Like that, we need to start using the middle of the field and start to have quicker breaking routes for Calvin Ridley. These long out routes or long goes, you don't really get to use your route running ability. That's just speed. You want him to be able to get that separation on that cut and start using the middle of the field, please. Almost all of our big plays seem to have come from the middle of the field, and yet we use it so sparingly.
Agreed. Yeah, the two big plays, so Ridley's touchdown, and then if y'all missed it, Ridley also had a 2-point conversion right after, where essentially the same route right in the middle of the end zone. And then one of the plays you pointed out earlier, Joey, that potential touchdown where Ingram was open was right in the middle of the field as well. But hey, I do want to give our offense some credit. I feel like we're getting a little heated, getting upset at offense, which they definitely left points on the board. But they also had some great factors in this game on Sunday, and we pointed them out earlier, but they deserve a ton of credit, and that is the offensive line giving Trevor time. I thought Trevor did a much better job of avoiding the rush, getting rid of the ball too, but 0 sacks on Sunday, even with Cam Robinson going down, and we know now that he is on IR, and that makes that Ezra Cleveland trade an A+++++, because the ability to put in Ezra Cleveland as a starting guard and one of potentially a top 10, top 12 starting guard in the league, that showed up on Sunday because our offensive line, especially in the pass block, was fantastic.
I've been higher on Cam than you have, Joey. I know we've had that discussion, but from a pass blocking perspective, I think our offensive line has improved with this situation, moving Walker Little to left tackle and Ezra Cleveland stepping in and playing very nicely. And on that on that screen pass that went for over 40 yards to Dearness Johnson, it's Ezra Cleveland down there blocking two guys inside the 10, 40 yards downfield. I loved seeing the effort by him and the play by him. So I think that's awesome from a passing perspective. I do think our run blocking does hurt. We've talked about Anton Harrison not quite being where he needs to be from a run blocking perspective, and Cam being really above average from a run blocking side of the ball. And so I think that's probably a little bit of why ETN had 20 carries and only 56 yards.
Yeah. to Ezra Cleveland, it's apparent now he needs to never leave left guard. Walker Little is fine at it, and if Ezra Cleveland ever goes down, like you have a backup, but he is night and day better than Walker Little is at left guard. It's not even close. And what I love to see is I actually saw videos of Ezra Cleveland doing that where he's running down the field blocking for screens back when he was with the Vikings, and to see him do it with the Jags, it was really, really great. Walker Little did a great job also stepping out of left guard and going to left tackle. That's not easy to do during the game. There are very different positions, different sets, and everything. So I thought he did a great job being able to move. I believe it was David Garrard called them Hall and Oates, Walker Little and Ezra Cleveland. They seem to be a really good pair together. They worked really well, even though they hadn't even gotten that many snaps together. So I loved seeing them kind of really play well. The question will be now when Cam Robinson hopefully comes back in 3 to 4 weeks, who do you start? Do you leave Walker Little and Ezra Cleveland in? Do you move Cam to left tackle and you let Walker sit? Or
That's a good question, Joey. So IR is a 4-week minimum. So at the soonest, we would see Cam Robinson back with 2 games left to go in the regular season. And hopefully if we keep playing as well as we're playing, we're going to potentially have an opportunity to rest starters in that final week. So I think even if he is able to get healthy, I think there's a very real possibility that we've seen the last Jags game where Cam Robinson has started for us, especially if this offensive line plays as well as it does on Sunday. I think there's no reason that you change it up or shake it up going forward.
Well, that's a hot take. We're paying Cam Robinson a whole lot of money. And look, it's a lot. Anything can happen. You could have other injuries on the offensive line. Personally, I still just want to see. I'm not saying that's going to be better, Joey, but I still would like to see what it would look like with Cam, Cleveland, and then on the other side, put Walker Little at right tackle just to see if that actually is our best 5. I recognize that Harrison is by far not a bust and has been a very good pickup for us, but he's still a rookie right tackle. And so if you can get a little bit better by having those other 2 tackles out there for a playoff push, I wouldn't hate it.
Again, we don't know yet, but I think the speed of putting Cam Robinson on the IR to me bodes that it's going to be longer than 4 weeks recovery. So I'm not an expert. I don't know everything about Cam Robinson's injury, but just the fact that we're sitting here on Tuesday and he's already on IR after an injury on Sunday, to me means I just don't think that we're going to see him this season. Maybe, and hopefully just for a point of depth. But even if we get him back, I don't know that he's necessarily going to be 100% and in 100% peak condition for the playoffs when we would need our very best offensive line.
fair enough. I mean, I'm with you, JT. I would like to see what it would be like with Walker Little at right tackle, but I just don't think that's going to happen this year.
Shoot, maybe Cam plays right tackle. I mean, he's a good run blocking guy. He's not quite as athletic as a left tackle you would like to see from a pass blocking perspective. But I mean, these are things that we can talk about in a month and a half if we don't experience any more offensive line injuries, or if Walker Little, or if Cam Robinson is able to come back more on schedule.
Oh, I mean, a lot of people have said Cam Robinson would be a good right tackle, but apparently that's just not what he wants to do. And the whole reason I brought this up is because I believe Walker Little can make sure that Cam Robinson doesn't start again. Not that we don't love Cam, but there's one thing that Walker Little needs to do. And Mrs. Little, if you are listening, let your son know the only thing he needs to do. He has the performance. He plays well. He is a very good left tackle, but he needs a little bit more attitude. He needs that edge that Cam Robinson brings. The first person to back up Trevor Lawrence is Cam Robinson. He's over there chatting. He's bringing that energy to the offensive line. I just don't see that yet from Walker Little. He seems to be a bit quiet, and he just kind of does his job, and that's good. But with an offensive line, you need to be a little bit meaner. You need to be a little bit of a dog, and I need to see that from Walker Little. That's the one thing is missing from him, is that dog.
Yeah, Little needs what Joey had after the Texans were throwing peanuts at us in the game. He needs to be ready to roll, ready to go, ready to have that mental and physical toughness because he is a great blocker. But Cam Robinson does bring a different level of energy when he's out there blocking for us. But wanted to give a couple other shout outs, especially on the receiving side. Luke Farrell, one of our backup tight ends, had a very nice game with 3 catches for 55 yards. And then Christian Kirk, Mr. Steady, Mr. Consistent, continues, especially on third down, to have some big catches. He had 4 receptions for 89 yards, continues to be on pace for a record-setting year for him personally in terms of receiving yards. And so very great performance, especially from our passing attack.
Yeah. Kirk, Ridley, Farrell, and Dearness Johnson all had a reception over 40 yards for the first time in 3.5 years. A quarterback has thrown 4 or more passes for over 40 yards. So that was a really nice job too for Trevor and the boys.
And I wanted to give a shout out to Calvin Ridley. I don't know if other people kind of recognize this, but at the beginning of the season, it seemed like when he missed a catch or wasn't doing very well, he was out of the game. He would like walk off the field. He'd go sit out for a couple plays and didn't seem like he was really into it. But he dropped that touchdown pass, and I sat there with Jack, and I was like, this is either going to break him for this game or he's going to come back mad. And he did just that. He came back, and he had a great finish. He had the touchdown catch. He made a bunch of other great catches, 89 yards and a touchdown and the 2-point conversion. I loved seeing that even though he had a bad drop, he came back, pushed it out of his mind, and had a great game after that drop. And I see that you have been working on that, Calvin Ridley, and I want to give a shout out to you.
Big shout out to Ridley. Shout out to our offense for doing enough to get a massive win, to get that monkey off the back of finally beating Houston. But let's talk about our defensive performance on Sunday. And of course, JT, you already passed out your game ball to superstar Josh Allen, 2.5 sacks. He is now, even with 6 games to go, second in Jaguars franchise history for number of sacks in a season with 12.5. But other than Josh Allen, who were some of the defensive playmakers that stood out to y'all in this Texans game?
I think the defensive line and Aluakon in the front 7 in general played extremely well. He had a half sack again from Trayvon Walker. He was involved in a lot of pressures and run stopping plays. And then Aluakon right now is second in the NFL for tackles. So he is all over the place. And Devin Lloyd as well. I mean, he's stepping up and playing. I think he was the highest rated NFL player, at least the highest rated Jaguar a couple of weeks ago on Pro Football Focus. And so look, the front 7 of Jacksonville, while we still have some depth issues, in my opinion, especially at pass rush, we're really our starters are some of the better ones in the league.
Yeah, this was a great game also for Trayvon Walker. I want to give him a shout out. I did see him in the backfield quite a bit, and I saw him get held a bunch. And so I want to say for you, Trayvon Walker, is I see when you're getting held, you push harder and you try to get to the quarterback. Don't be afraid to throw up your hands and make a little bit of a show to show off the holding. It's okay to go ahead and get that penalty because that's 10 yards back. It's just as good as a sack if you draw the hold. So don't be afraid to throw up your hands. I mean, you see TJ Watt do it. You see the best guys, even Nick Bosa and them, when they can't get to the quarterback and they're being held, then they throw up their hands. You know, they make a scene, and so that way the ref sees the hold. So don't be afraid, Trayvon Walker. You're being held a lot. So make a little scene. Make sure the refs see you being held.
And I think more of that will come to as Trayvon Walker continues to improve, as he continues to get what's often called, especially in the NBA, superstar treatment, where they get a lot more fouls called for them because the refs just know, hey, they're really good. So the odds are they probably are getting held if they're not getting back there. But I agree with both of you guys. I thought our pass rush was fantastic. So we end up with 4 sacks. but we had so many more opportunities. We were in the backfield a ton. And I do have to give a little credit, as painful as it is, that CJ Stroud, his legs were dynamic on Sunday. He was able to stretch so many plays. And that's what killed us, really, was that some of the secondary guys were having to cover 4, 5, 6 seconds because he just kept running back and forth. And so, but a 4-sack game where Josh Allen has 2.5, Trayvon Walker, who you just gave some love to, Joey, he has now already exceeded the number of sacks he had his rookie season with another half sack this Sunday. And then Roy Robertson Harris added a sack as well to get 4 sacks on Sunday. So anytime you can get 4 sacks, that's a job well done from our pass rush.
Yeah, CJ Stroud's pocket awareness is fantastic. He's a fun quarterback to watch. And one of the big keys to the game that we talked about too is limiting the big plays. I think they had 5 or 6 plays of 35 or more yards. We had the one that was benefited, or that we benefited from some questionable officiating with a procedural call where Tank Dell catches the 58-yard pass that was called back. But to hold him to only 5 for 50 right now and how hot he's been playing is great. And the only time we actually gave up a long pass was to Xavier Hutchinson, which is kind of a head-scratching one too. Is his only like second or third catch of the entire season, where he caught a 34-yarder there late in the second half. But overall, I think the defense did a great job. And if you're running around for 5 seconds and you're still not giving up these deep balls that he was hunting at times, really hats off to Cisco and Williams and Buster Brown too for stepping up instead of Campbell being out with another week with the injury.
Yes. Watching CJ Stroud play, it was almost like watching playground football. The way he kind of ran around, trying to keep the play alive. The wide receivers weren't even running routes anymore because the routes they were running were already gone. So they're just trying to find any way to get open. It just kind of felt like one of those backyard football games where you're like, all right, just go get open. It's really great to see our defense just kind of make their plays obsolete, and they just had to try to make something happen. And that's really good by our defense to make them play that playground football and then still be able to hold him when he's got 6, 7 seconds and still can't find anyone. That's really good by our back secondary guys. They played really well.
This is the word that I keep using about our defense. I don't think we're perfect. I think we're playing beyond our expectations, of course, and playing perhaps even beyond our talent. But this is the one word I keep using about our defense, and it is clutch. Joey and I, we were talking about this a ton on the drive back, stuck in terrible Houston traffic, and we kept being like, oh, I'm so glad that we won. This would have been a terrible drive back to Dallas on a loss, on a heartbreaker, because what was the narrative going into the game? CJ Stroud is Mr. Clutch. He keeps having these fourth quarter comeback drives, and he had the opportunity on Sunday. They were driving the ball, but our defense made huge plays, even though they were tired after chasing Stroud so much of that game. But Josh Allen, again, those 1.5 sacks on that final drive, that combined sack with Trayvon Walker to kick them just far enough out of field goal range. This defense is clutch. They stepped up again and again when they need to, and we were able to bring out another victory because this defense is that one word, they're clutch.
Yes, they are. And they shut down the run, right? They continue to do what they're great at, which is stopping the run. Singletary had back-to-back 100-yard games. Dameon Pierce being healthy again, who is somebody who has hurt us before in the past. And both of those guys were held under 20 yards rushing. So the defense, really well coached, getting exactly what you want to get out of them. And outside of Campbell, have been really pretty healthy this year, which I think has been a benefit to the Jaguars too.
The defense has been really great all season. I think they've only really had 2 kind of misstep games, and that was the first Houston game and the 49ers game, obviously. So it's great to see them back on the swing, and they are clutch. There's been so many times in the years past where you were hoping that the Jags defense would hold them. All they have to do is not give up a touchdown, and then what do? They give up a touchdown. And it's just nice to see the narrative change. Doug Peterson and Mike Caldwell have really changed this Jaguars team to where you can start believing in them again. You can start cheering for them. And We are doing so well. 8-3 is incredible. And that leads us into the coaching. What did y'all think of Doug and Mike Caldwell, how they do coaching and the special teams?
Yeah, I think you have to give all of our coaches, including Press Taylor, an A. Look, did you leave some points on the field? Did you miss a couple plays? Absolutely. But that's what's going to happen in a high level, high emotion game like this. And the big thing we said over and over again was we had to change the narrative from week 3. What happened in week 3? The Houston Texans jump out to this huge 17-0 lead, and the Jaguars are playing their best when they can get rolling early on offense and defense. We had several early 3-and-outs on defense, and we were able to put together a touchdown and a field goal to take a 10-0 lead midway through the second quarter. So I thought across the board, great job by Doug Peterson, having the guys ready to go. Very good game plan by our defense, and strong, not perfect, but strong play calling by even Press Taylor.
Completely agree, Jack. I've said my piece regarding the decision at the end of the half, and at the end of the day, it didn't matter because we found ways to win the game, and I think the coaching staff called one of their better games so far.
Definitely. The coaching was very good this game. There's only one play call that I didn't agree with, and that was the right before halftime QB sweep. I wish we had done a different play, but I also wanted to take a quick second to put to rest all the crying about the referees and the bad calls, or there were too many pass interferences. So I found this stat out there on X or Twitter. The Texans D has committed the second most pass interferences this year. The Jaguars offense ranks number 1 in drawing pass interference penalties. And then the ref that game, Clay Martin, is ranked in top 5 for most pass interference calls. So that just kind of shows you that this was going to happen no matter what. Is we are very good at drawing the pass interferences. The Texans seem to be a team that commits a lot of pass interferences. And then you have a referee who calls pass interferences quite a bit. So the Texans should have seen that and be like, okay, we need to be better at not causing pass interferences. And they weren't. I watched multiple pass interferences, multiple ones that weren't called. So this whole crying and the refs wanted us to win. No, you just are breaking the rules. You're the second most pass interference defense. Like, just do better.
I've never heard such in-depth analysis on penalties and flags, but good stuff, Joey. That's super interesting. I think it's just a narrative of when you're a winning team, what is the other team always going to complain or whine about? It's going to be penalties. It's going to be the refs. And so when you're winning, people are always going to cry about the refs. And what do they do in every Chiefs game, Eagles game, for college, Alabama game? They're always saying, the refs are on the other side. The refs aren't one side or the other. I thought we missed some calls. I thought we got some calls. I thought they missed some calls. But overall, when the game counted, we made the plays enough to get a big time road win. And I think to start a new win streak. We got 2 in a row. Let's keep it rolling.
Yeah. Hey, what do the Jags have in common with Alabama and the Eagles and the Chiefs? Well, I guess it means we're the greatest. So you know what? If the refs are cheering for us, well, then come join the circus here, because it's time to jump on board and become a Jaguar fan if you're not already. And so with that, we will wrap things up for today. Hopefully you enjoyed the content. As Jack mentioned at the top, like us on Instagram, on Twitter. Follow us, leave us 5 stars in Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And one last time, with a victory in Houston, finally.